Good morning, students. Welcome to the sixth semester. As you know, I am dealing with methodology and perspectives of humanities. In my live class, I discussed this topic, why study humanities. Here in this class, we'll be starting with the last chapter, which is titled Narration and Representation. I will be following two textbooks. Textbook titled Humanities, Methodology and Perspectives by Abhijit Kundu and Pramod Nair, and a textbook with the same title by Kamala K. In this chapter, we will be studying what is narratology, how these narratives represent reality, what are the different narrative modes of thinking, what are the different types of narratives found in literature, in history, in philosophy, and we will also discuss topics like textuality, reading, etc. I hope this paper will provide new and great insights on methodologies and perspectives of humanities. Let me start. This chapter is all about narratology, which is the study of narrative structures. Initially, it was a branch of structuralism, a critical theory, but later it achieved a certain independence from its parent theory. Now it has independent existence. It has become a theory on its own. Here in narratology, we'll try to understand how these narratives make meaning. What are the basic mechanisms, procedures which are common in all those acts of storytelling. We are trying to identify that common strain which is there in all storytelling processes. Let me narrate you something. If you go to a good restaurant, they will have this menu card. I recently visited a restaurant in Ernakulam. It is Calicut Notebook, a good one. They had this menu card. I read that menu card in which all those list of food items are given, naturally. But there was this dish titled Angel Honey Wings, and they had this description below, which says it is that crispy fried chicken wings glazed with honey and garlic sauce. And the other dish was naughty nuggets. It is, they had this description below, which is minced chicken nuggets filled with almond flakes and cashew nuts and deep fried. They had this nutty fish, which gave this description like fresh caught fish coated in a layer of light golden batter and served with a generous portion of French fries. You all know these kind of descriptions. In the catering trade, these descriptions are called narratives. As simple as that. It is an interesting fact in itself. But then there is this problem. Like The customers may take them literally and start complaining that the batter is golden at all, but it is not golden, it is some sort of brownish. So it may leave the restaurants with the charges of false description. That is why they put this footnotes at the end of this menu card, which says that these narratives are guidelines only, are not to be taken literally. And this set us thinking about what are narratives, what is narrative theory. And here we can understand more closely how these narratives start making meaning, how there are all those basic mechanisms, procedures behind this storytelling. So, narratology is not reading or interpreting all those individual stories, but it is an attempt to study the nature of story itself. അതായത് ഇൻഡിവിജ്വൽ സ്റ്റോറീസ് മനസ്സിലാക്കുന്ന അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഇൻ്റർപ്രറ്റ് ചെയ്യുന്ന ഒരു പ്രോസസ്സിനെയല്ല നറേറ്റോളജി എന്ന് പറയുന്നത്. നമ്മൾ സ്റ്റോറിയുടെ തന്നെ സ്വഭാവത്തിനെ പഠിക്കുക എന്നുള്ളതാണ് നറേറ്റോളജി. And to understand it as a concept. And at the same time, it becomes a cultural practice. It has a structure which involves all those cultural and social interactions. Narrators don't exist outside all those cultural and social interactions. It All these narratives live within that cultural and social interactions. We will discuss it in detail in our later classes. So first of all, we should begin with the basic distinction between story and plot. Story is the actual sequence of events as it happens. If you take the example of that menu card, chicken nuggets or fish fingers or chicken wings, fried chicken wings. This is the actual meal, and the description below, it is the narrative account of it. From there, you can understand that the story is the actual sequence, what you see as actual meal. When they are edited, when those events are edited, ordered, packaged, and presented, it becomes a plot. And story will or must begin at beginning, and then it move chronologically with nothing left out. It end at conclusion. And plot, on the other hand, may well begin somewhere in the middle of a chain of events and may then backtrack, providing us with a flashback which fills us in on things which happened earlier. It may also have all those elements of flash forward. What is flash forward? That is hinting at events which will happen later. So you must understand that plot is actually a version of the story, one of the versions of the story, which should not be taken literally, just like you see in all those menu descriptions. So this is the basic distinction between story and plot. We'll elaborate in our later classes. So this is the basic definition of story and plot. Story is the actual event, actual sequence. It must have a beginning and it will end at the conclusion. Plot is how we edit or how we order that event. And now we discuss this point, how stories act as a bridge. These narratives act as a bridge which enable all those human beings to accept the phenomenon called life. It contains all those tales of humans, aliens, celestial beings, and it even reveals the beliefs of life before birth, life after death, secrets of death. And you know that we all love hearing stories. Children, they are fascinated towards stories. If you have ever narrated a story to a child, you will see that story unfolding in their wide eyes. We are all familiar. In childhood, we have listened to all those stories, all those fairy tales, all those Indian Panchatantra series, all those stories from Ramayana, Mahabharata, tales from Arabian Nights. It is stories that makes us. It is said that a child's need for stories is as fundamental as his need for food. We all need stories to survive. And this is the definition of a narrator. It is said that narrative is somebody telling somebody else on some occasion and for some purpose that something happened. How interesting is that? It is something like what you write in university exams. You don't know the names, places, and you will fill in with somebody, anybody, everybody, etc. സോ നറേറ്റീവ് എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞു കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ ആരോ ആരോടോ ഏതോ കാര്യത്തിനെ കുറിച്ച് എന്തോ കാര്യത്തിന് വേണ്ടി എപ്പോഴോ നടന്നത് പറയുന്നതിനെയാണ് നറേറ്റീവ് എന്ന് വിളിക്കുന്നത്. A very interesting definition. So narratives are innumerable. It is present in every age, every place, and society. It moves across religion, across places, across society, and all these narration or storytelling is also universal. It is present in all human societies and it carves a deep structure into our minds. It gives structure to our minds. It is the grammar of our minds. That is why it is said that it is fundamental, just like food. Now we move to the five propositions which discuss narratives. It is given by Andrew Bennett and Nicholas Royal. This term narratology or the sciences of narratives was coined by Todro, that is, he was a French critic. And here, these two theorists give out five propositions about narratives. You do that. Stories are everywhere. As we said earlier, there are stories present in every age, every place, every society. You know that there is no community or social group without narratives. Narratives define our lifestyles, our culture, our tradition, religion, ethnicity, and all those classes and human groups have their own narratives. which comes from their cultural backgrounds and becomes part of literature. So stories are everywhere. Now, next one is not only do we tell stories, but stories tell us. We human beings are stories. നമ്മൾ കഥ പറയുക കൂടാതെ കഥകൾ നമ്മളെക്കുറിച്ചും പറയുന്നു. We are made up of stories. We make stories and we are made up of stories. That is why ഒരാൾ മരിച്ചു കഴിയുമ്പോൾ നമ്മൾ പറയുന്നത് അയാളുടെ കഥ കഴിഞ്ഞു എന്നാണ്. അയാളുടെ കഥ കഴിഞ്ഞു. അയാള് എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് മനുഷ്യൻ എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് ഒരു കഥയാണ്. So we tell stories and stories tell us. And next is telling a story is always bound up with power, property, and domination. So who has this power to tell stories? The one with property, one who has power, one who dominate the other, have the right to tell the story. The others are all marginalized, they are silenced, they are not allowed to tell their stories. That is why, even in history of English literature, we don't see much of women writers, much of works of women writers. It is not that women were not present during that era or women were not that creative during that period. It is that in patriarchal society, the control, power, domination, the power over property all lies with men. So, telling of stories is always bound up with those in power, those who have property and domination. Fourth one, stories are multiple, always more than one story. You know that. There are different versions of a single incident. You can have multiple versions of a single incident. So, stories are multiple, innumerable. And stories, last one, stories always have something to tell us about stories themselves. Stories speak about themselves, that is known as self reflection, metafictional elements. You have studied the story by Chandramati. It is a postmodern story of Jyoti Vishwanath. It has all these elements, all these metafictional elements, a story which speaks about a story. So these are the five propositions discussed by Andrew Bennett and Nicholas Roy. So right now we are stopping here. In the next class we'll continue with story and narrative and culture and narrative. Hope it is clear. If you have any doubts, please contact me. Thank you girls. Have a nice day.